The morning mist hugged the Blue Ridge Valley like a secret. It rolled between pines and sagging barns, drifting low over gravel roads that glittered faintly with frost. Amara Thomson's old pickup rattled along the curve, its muffler protesting every bump. In the bed, 2 crates of kindling clattered beside a dented water bowl, and Scout, a golden retriever, watched the world flash past with his tongue lolling in contentment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 28, Amara had long since traded city echoes for mountain quiet. She'd left Raleigh's towers and deadlines 5 years earlier, chasing a life that made sense in her hands, split firewood, planted potatoes, mended fences. Her cabin sat on 5 acres of sloped land outside Elk Hollow, the kind of place where nights were scored with cricket song and mornings smelled of sap and smoke. She worked part-time at the feed store, bartered for eggs with neighbors, and learned that peace was measured in how long you could go without checking your phone. But lately, even peace had bills. The roof leaked, firewood ran low, and her savings account had become a cruel joke. So when she passed the cracked paint sign outside Henderson's storage lot, abandoned unit auction today, everything must go. Curiosity tugged harder than sense. She parked between a rust-eaten sedan and a red Jeep whose bumper barely clung on. About a dozen locals milled about, hands stuffed in flannel pockets, breath steaming in the cold. They spoke in murmurs, their eyes on the wiry auctioneer who flipped through a clipboard like a deck of cards. Unit 39, sold. Unit 41, sold. His voice cracked through the fog. One by one, corrugated doors screeched upward to reveal sagging couches, boxes of mildewed clothes, and the occasional broken treadmill, ghosts of forgotten lives. Amara leaned against her truck, trying to convince herself she didn't belong there. But when the auctioneer clanged his gavel and barked, "Next up, Unit 42, starting bid $5, something inside her jolted. The metal door rose with a reluctant groan. The crowd peered in. Nothing special, just a few boxes stacked neatly, a collapsed camping chair, and, in the back, a large chest hidden under a tarp. The auctioneer looked bored. $5, anyone? No hands? Amara squinted. Beneath the tarp, a corner of faded red fabric caught the light. It wasn't random clutter. It looked placed, cared for. She hesitated, then raised her hand. $5. The auctioneer's grin was quick. Sold to the lady with the dog. A few men chuckled. Scout wagged his tail, like he understood she'd just made history, or a mistake. When the crowd drifted off, Amara rolled up her sleeves and tugged open the unit. The air was stale with dust and faint pine resin. Scout trotted ahead, nose twitching furiously. The tarp peeled away with a whisper, revealing a heavy chest of oak and brass, its surface carved with an unfamiliar spiral within a triangle symbol. The metal fittings had tarnished to green, but the craftsmanship was undeniable. "Looks older than the storage place itself," she murmured. Running her fingers over the carving, a rusty crowbar leaned in the corner. She wedged it under the latch and pressed. The chest groaned in protest, then snapped open with a hollow crack that echoed off concrete walls. Inside, neatly folded canvas sheets, brittle maps bound with string, and a small tin box. She flipped it open. Faded photographs slid out, sepia mountains, narrow trails, a lean man posing beside a mule. One picture snagged her attention. The man standing before a jagged cliff marked with that same spiral triangle symbol carved into the rock. On the back, written in spidery ink, Hollow Creek Mine, 1937, for whoever follows the trail. A shiver rippled through her. A mine, Scout whined, pawing at the bottom of the chest. She brushed aside the remaining cloth and froze. Beneath the lining, wrapped carefully in oilcloth, gleamed a small brass key. "Well, boy," she whispered, "looks like our $5 bought a mystery." Scout barked once. Tail sweeping dust, they loaded the chest into the truck bed, the symbol glinting dully in the weak sun. The wind picked up, carrying a hiss through the pines, a sound that felt almost like words. Amara paused, hand on the tailgate, as goose flesh crawled up her arms. What if someone wanted this found? That night, fire crackled low in the hearth while rain whispered against the windows. Scout lay curled beside the flames, dreaming. Amara sat at her kitchen table, photographs spread across the wood like cards from a fortune deck. She studied the miner's face, sharp, steady, haunted. Whoever he'd been, he'd seen something worth hiding. One photo matched a ridge she knew, Hollow Creek. She fetched her wall map, fingers tracing the contour lines until she found it. A creek bending near her own land. Her heart quickened. She lifted the chest's lid again, scanning for more clues. Beneath the maps, a single phrase had been scratched into the inside panel, almost invisible in the dim light. Below the pine where water hums. Amara leaned back. The words pulsed in her mind like a heartbeat. Scout stirred, tail thumping. She smiled faintly. Adventure, huh? Haven't had one of those in a while. Outside, thunder rolled over the ridges. She doused the lantern and stood by the window gazing into the dark. For a moment, lightning flashed, and in that split-second reflection, she thought she saw movement near the tree line. A faint metallic glint. Then nothing, only the rain, the mountains, and the whisper of an old secret waiting to be unearthed. Dawn broke clear and sharp, burning the mist off the valley in slow ribbons. Frost glittered on the grass like crushed glass. Scout bounded through it, paws kicking up tiny clouds of ice, while Amara stood on her porch mug in hand, watching the first sunlight touch the Blue Ridge ridgeline. She hadn't slept much. The chest sat open on her kitchen table, maps and photographs scattered beside the brass key that caught firelight all night like it wanted to be used. Below the pine where water hums. The words had burrowed into her brain. By mid-morning she'd made up her mind. A flashlight, rope, gloves and thermos went into her canvas backpack. Scout barked when she slung it over her shoulder. Yeah, she said, grinning. You're coming too. The trail behind her cabin climbed through dense fir and laurel. Rain still slicked the roots from last night's storm, and the air smelled of wet moss and cold stone. Amara moved slow, letting Scout lead, following the sound of running water that threaded faintly through the woods. After an hour, she reached the ridge. From here, the world fell away in layers of green and blue haze. Below, Hollow Creek shimmered like a silver vein cutting through the valley floor. Its current murmured softly, an endless hum. Amara descended carefully, grabbing branches for balance. The creek widened where two streams met, forming a shallow pool. She crouched, dipping her fingers into the icy water. Scout sniffed around the bank, tail swishing. Below the pine, she murmured, scanning the trees. Several stood nearby, tall and ancient. But one caught her eye, a lone pine growing from a boulder that jutted toward the creek, its roots curling over the rock like knotted fingers. Water lapped against the stone, and beneath the soft roar of the creek she could hear it, a faint vibration, almost like a hum. Her pulse quickened. That's it, Scout barked once, and began to dig at the base of the pine. Dirt and needles flew. His paw hit something hard with a dull clink. Amara dropped to her knees. Together they cleared the soil until a square outline emerged. Wood, dark and half-rotten, fitted with a rusted metal latch, a trapdoor. No way, she breathed. The padlock was long gone, the hinges crusted with rust. She pried at the edge until it gave with a groan and a puff of stale air, heavy with the scent of earth and age. A narrow shaft disappeared into darkness. Scout whined and backed up a step. I know, buddy, she said softly, shining her flashlight down. The beam caught the outline of stone walls, man-made. We'll just take a look. She tied her rope around a root, tested her weight, and lowered herself slowly. The air grew colder the deeper she went. 10 feet down, her boots touched solid ground. Scout peered from above, whining. I'm fine, she called up. Her voice echoed strangely. The sound swallowed by damp rock, the tunnel stretched before her, propped by decaying timber beams. Rusted mining tools lay scattered, an old pickaxe, a shattered lantern, the ghost of someone's labor. She ran her light over the wall and saw faint chisel marks where men had once hacked through stone. Something glittered faintly in the debris. She crouched, brushing off dust, and found a small hunk of quartz laced with thin golden veins. Her breath caught. "Gold! Scout!" she called, holding it up. His answering bark echoed faintly from above. Then her light passed over a section of timber where the symbol, the spiral inside a triangle, had been carved deep into the wood. Beneath it, faded paint spelled 4 words, "Do not disturb what's buried deeper." Amara's stomach tightened. She took a slow step back. The air felt different here, thicker, colder, vibrating faintly like something breathing through the walls. She turned to climb back up. Halfway to the surface, her boots slipped on damp stone. The rope burned her palms as she caught herself, heart hammering. "Easy," she gasped, forcing her weight upward. Scout barked anxiously, his head a golden blur above the opening. When she finally scrambled out, sunlight hit her face like a blessing. She rolled onto her back, breathing hard, clutching the quartz chunk to her chest. Scout licked her face, whining until she laughed shakily. "It's okay, boy." "We found something." The trapdoor gaped beside them, a black wound in the earth. Amara replaced the rotten board and weighed it down with stones. "Not today," she whispered. "Not until I know what we're walking into." That evening, the wind came down the ridge like a sigh. The chest still sat open in her cabin, its maps whispering in the draught. Amara set the quartz on the table beside the brass key. The gold vein gleamed faintly in the lamplight. If it was real, even a handful of that ore could be worth thousands. Enough to fix the roof, pay off her truck, maybe even buy her land outright. But that warning, "Do not disturb what's buried deeper," echoed through her mind. She poured herself a shot of whiskey, sat cross-legged on the floor, and studied the old photographs again. The miner in them seemed almost alive in the flickering light. His eyes, steady, haunted, seemed to look right at her. "What did you find out there?" she murmured. "And what did it cost you?" Scout raised his head from the hearth, ears twitching. Outside, something rustled the gravel drive, slow footsteps crunching, then stopping. The lantern flame quivered. Amara set down her glass, every muscle tightening. She moved quietly to the window and lifted the curtain an inch. A black truck idled at the edge of her property, headlights off, its shape barely visible in the dark. For a long minute, nothing moved. Then the engine revved once, low, deliberate, and the truck rolled away, vanishing down the road toward the hollow. Amara stood frozen, pulse thudding in her ears. Scout growled softly beside her. She whispered, "They know." Sleep was impossible. She sat up late, the chest open beside her, a revolver on the table she hadn't touched in years. Every creak of the cabin made her heart jump. Around midnight, thunder rolled somewhere far beyond the ridge. When she finally drifted into a shallow doze, she dreamed of tunnels and echoes, of gold gleaming under lantern light, and a voice whispering through stone. The mountain keeps what it's owed. At first light, she was already packing again, extra batteries, gloves, a hammer. If someone else had been at that site, she needed to know before they took whatever was down there, or before the mountain decided to close its doors for good. Scout trotted beside her as she stepped onto the trail. The morning mist was thicker than usual, curling around the trees like smoke. The world felt watchful. She touched the brass key hanging from her neck and whispered, "Let's find out what they were willing to bury alive." The mist clung to the mountain like a living thing. Amara and Scout moved through it in silence, boots sinking into damp moss, their breath forming pale ghosts that vanished into the grey. Every few steps, Scout paused to sniff the air, ears twitching, uneasy. It wasn't just the fog. The forest felt different now, quieter, heavier, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. By the time they reached the creek, the sun was struggling to break through the haze. The sound of rushing water masked everything else, the groan of the pines, the whisper of her boots on stone. The trapdoor beneath the lone pine waited where they had left it, covered neatly with rocks. Amara knelt, listening. Nothing. No voices, no engines, no signs anyone had been here. She lifted the stones one by one until the old wood was exposed again. It looked darker than before, soaked through from the night rain. "All right," she said quietly. "In and out, fast!" Scout whined, tail low. "You stay up here. If you hear anything, bark like hell." She tied off her rope, turned on her flashlight and slipped below. The air hit her like a fist of cold. Moisture beaded on the stone walls, dripping steadily into shallow puddles. The smell of earth and rust filled her lungs. Her light cut through the dark in a narrow cone, illuminating the carved warning, "Do not disturb what's buried deeper." "Yeah. Well," she muttered, "I'm not here for deeper." She followed the tunnel farther this time. The floor sloped gently downward, the walls narrowing until she had to duck. Old timbers groaned overhead. Water trickled along the edges, whispering against her boots. After 20 yards, the passage opened into a small cavern. A collapsed section of rock half-buried an old mining cart. Scattered around it were tools, broken lanterns, and a handful of rusted tins. The air smelled faintly metallic, like blood on steel. Amara swept her light over the far wall and froze. There, painted in faded red pigment, was the same spiral symbol from the chest. Larger now, encircled by dozens of handprints. Beneath it, someone had scratched words into the stone with the edge of a pickaxe. They sealed it, but it still breathes. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She took a slow step closer. The rock below the inscription was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, as if something beneath had once pushed upward, something trying to break free. The light flickered. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement in the dark behind her, a shadow slipping along the wall. She spun, flashlight sweeping the tunnel. "Who's there?" Silence. Only the drip of water and the distant thrum of the creek above. She swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. "You're spooking yourself, Thomson." But the shadow had looked human. When she finally climbed out, sunlight felt unreal. Scout barked once, running to her side. His fur bristled as he sniffed the trap door. Amara brushed dirt from her hands. "Yeah, you felt it too." She covered the entrance again and started toward home, keeping to the trail, scanning for tracks. Halfway up the ridge, she found them, tire marks in the mud, fresh. A black residue clung to the edge of the rut, oily and sharp-smelling, the same truck from last night. Her gut tightened. She crouched and touched the dirt. Still damp. Whoever had been here came early, probably just before she arrived. She straightened and scanned the forest. Every tree felt like it was watching her. Back at the cabin, she locked the door, pulled the curtains, and set the quartz sample on the counter. She needed to know what she was dealing with. Was it really gold, or just Perite fooling her into a dream? She fetched her field test kit from the shed. A little hydrochloric acid, a few drops on the stone, and nothing. Real gold wouldn't react, and it didn't. The ore was genuine. Amara stared at the golden thread glimmering through the quartz and exhaled. "You've got to be kidding me." She was sitting on a forgotten mine worth God knows how much, buried under a pine no one had touched in decades. Scout barked, breaking her trance. He stood at the window, growling low. Amara followed his gaze. Across the valley, half hidden by the trees, a figure stood watching the cabin. A tall man in a tan jacket, face obscured by the morning glare. When he realized she'd seen him, he turned and melted into the trees. Amara's breath hitched. Oh, hell no. She grabbed her revolver, checked the cylinder, 5 bullets, enough to make a statement, and stepped out onto the porch. The forest was silent again. Not a branch moved. She descended the steps slowly, eyes sweeping the tree line. The silence pressed in thick and strange. Even the birds were gone. "Who's out there?" she called. "You lost or just stupid?" No answer. But she could feel him, watching, waiting. Finally, she holstered the gun and went back inside, heart hammering. She locked the door, double-bolted the windows, and sat at the table with the map from the chest spread in front of her. The hand-drawn trails crisscrossed the valley. One line, marked in faint red pencil, led from the creek to an area labeled simply Hollow's End. She traced it with her finger. The spot was only a few miles south, near the old mining road. If this was connected to the sealed tunnel, that might explain the watchers. Maybe the mine wasn't abandoned at all. Scout rested his head on her knee, whining softly. "I know," she murmured, scratching his ears. "We'll find out what's going on." Just not alone. She needed help. Someone local, someone she could trust. And there was only one person who fit that bill, Sheriff Lucas Kane. By afternoon, Amara's truck rumbled down the gravel road toward town. The valley opened up before her in rolling green waves. Old barns sagged under the weight of decades. Smoke curled from a few chimneys near the general store. Kane's cruiser was parked outside the diner. He was exactly where she hoped he'd be. The sheriff was in his 40s, lean, with the kind of calm eyes that made people talk. He looked up as she entered, setting down his coffee. "Amara Thomson," he said with a faint smile. "You're a long way from your ridge this early?" "Yeah," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Something's going on out there." He raised an eyebrow. "Go on." She told him everything, about the storage unit, the chest, the map, the mine. She left out the gold, for now. When she mentioned the black truck, his expression changed. "That sounds like the Kindle brothers," he said slowly. "They run scrap out of Murphy, but lately they've been sniffing around old properties." "You sure it wasn't them?" "I'm sure," she said. "They weren't scavenging." "They were waiting," Kane leaned back. "You've got my attention." "I'll take a look. Tomorrow morning," she said. "Meet me by Hollow Creek." He nodded once. "You're not going back alone, are you?" Amara forced a smile. Wouldn't dream of it, but they both knew she was lying. That night the moon hung thin and sharp over the ridge. Amara sat by the fire, revolver on the table, the brass key glinting at her throat. Scout dozed beside her, one ear twitching. Outside, something moved past the window, just a shadow. Quick and silent. Then came the soft crunch of boots on gravel. Amara's hand tightened around the gun. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Who's there?" she whispered. The only answer was the wind. But when she looked again, the trapdoor key on the table was gone. The next morning broke cold and silver. A thin mist hung low over the ridge, veiling the valley in ghostlight. Amara's coffee sat untouched on the table. She hadn't slept. The key, the brass key, was gone. It hadn't just fallen or been misplaced. Someone had taken it. Scout paced the cabin, restless, tail low. Every so often he'd stop at the door and growl softly, as if the scent still lingered outside. Amara rubbed her eyes and tried to think. No forced entry. The door was still bolted, windows locked. Whoever came in knew what they were doing. She stared at the chest. Empty now except for the faded photographs and maps. Her gaze fixed on one image, a black and white portrait of the miner. The man's eyes were intense, unyielding, and familiar. She fetched her late father's old photo album from the trunk under her bed. Most of it was filled with grainy images of hunters, logging camps, family gatherings in the valley. Then she found it, a group picture from 1939, men lined up in front of a timber cabin. And there, third from the left, stood the same man from the chest, same jawline, same eyes, written under the photo. Isaac Thomson, foreman, Hollow Creek Mine. Her throat went dry. Isaac Thomson, her great-grandfather. The mine was her family's. By the time she met Sheriff Kane at the creek that afternoon, the fog had lifted. He leaned against his cruiser, arms crossed, hat low over his brow. "Morning," he said. "You look like you haven't slept." "I didn't," Amara admitted. "Someone broke in last night. Took something. What'd they take?" She hesitated. "A key. Came from the storage unit," Kane frowned. "You think it's connected to that mine?" "I know it is," she said, handing him the old photo. "That's Isaac Thomson, my great-grandfather." Kane studied it, whistled low. "So this isn't just some random find. It's your bloodline?" "Yeah, and apparently someone else knows it." Kane motioned toward the woods. "Let's go see this hole of yours." The hike to the pine was quiet, except for the crunch of boots and the murmur of the creek. Birds had returned, though their songs were sharp, uneasy. When they reached the spot, the stones covering the trapdoor were scattered. The wood lay half open. Amara's stomach dropped. "They've been here," Kane crouched, examining the ground. "Tire tracks again. And boot prints. 2 people, maybe 3. He lifted a small object from the dirt, a shell casing to .45 caliber, clean and recent. This isn't from a hunter. Amara's pulse quickened. Then they're armed. Looks that way, Kane said. You stay behind me. She ignored that. We go down together. He hesitated, then nodded. Careful and quiet. They descended one after the other, flashlight sweeping over the stone. The carved warning glowed faintly in the beam. Do not disturb what's buried deeper. Kane muttered, Well, that's not ominous at all. The tunnel opened into the cavern again, but this time the air was different, stirred, disturbed. Footprints crisscrossed the dust. A lantern burned low near the old mine cart, its flame guttering. Someone had been here within the hour. Amara's light caught something new on the far wall. Fresh chalk markings over the spiral symbol. A map, a rough diagram of the valley, with one section circled in red. Hollow's End. Kane crouched beside it. Looks like they were heading deeper into the mountain. Amara felt the ground vibrate faintly under her boots. A deep rhythmic pulse, almost like machinery far below. You hear that? Yeah, Kane said softly. Generators. Someone's working down there. The vibration grew stronger for a moment, then stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. They both turned toward the tunnel, leading deeper in. A faint metallic clink echoed through the dark, chain against stone. Kane motioned for quiet, unholstering his sidearm. Amara raised her flashlight. The beam caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow slipping behind a support beam. Stop! Kane shouted, stepping forward. Something whistled through the dark. A warning shot slammed into the rock near his head, spraying dust. Scout barked furiously above ground. Get back! Kane hissed. They're armed and blind firing. They retreated fast, climbing the rope and sealing the trapdoor behind them. Amara's lungs burned as she reached the surface. She leaned against a tree, heart pounding. Kane holstered his weapon. They're already working that mine. That's why the Kindles are out here. They must have found records of your great-grandfather's claim. Then that key they stole probably opened something down there. Bolt safe another shaft. Amara's eyes narrowed. And if Isaac sealed it for a reason, then whatever's down there shouldn't be unsealed. They drove back to her cabin, the sun already low. Kane called it in, requesting a patrol sweep near Hollow Creek. If those boys are mining illegally, we'll catch them, he said. Amara nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. The chest, the map, the family name carved into the mine timbers, it all pointed to something buried, not just gold. Something her great-grandfather had wanted hidden. That night, she sat by the fire, turning the quartz sample over in her hand. When she tapped it lightly against the brass rim of her lamp, it made a strange sound. Not just a clink, but a faint ring, almost melodic. She frowned. That wasn't normal ore. She held it to the light and saw tiny lines etched across the surface. Not natural veins, engravings. She fetched her magnifying glass. Under the lens, the markings came into focus, letters, tiny and precise, etched into the quartz like code. She whispered as she read the faintest line aloud. Thomson blood shall guard what gold can't buy. A chill slid down her spine. Scout whined softly. Tail thumping once, she reached for the photo again. Isaac Thomson stared back, expression hard and resolute. Beneath his coat she noticed something for the first time, a pendant, brass, the same key. The mine wasn't just her family's legacy. It was their secret, and the key, her key, was part of it. Outside, thunder rolled over the ridge. The wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of machinery from the hollow below. Somewhere in that dark, men were digging where they shouldn't. Amara stood, pocketed the quartz, and slung her rifle over her shoulder. She looked at Scout. They think it's gold, she said quietly. But they're digging up a curse. Scout barked once, as if in answer. She blew out the lantern and stepped into the dark. The storm broke just after midnight, rain lashing the mountains like a living thing. Thunder rolled through the valley, shaking the cabin walls. Amara stood by the window, watching lightning flash over the ridge. Each burst illuminated the forest in violent white, showing glimpses of motion, trees swaying, mist curling. Maybe something else. Scout pressed close to her leg. Trembling, I know, boy, she whispered. Feels wrong tonight. She turned away and opened the old chest one more time. Beneath the photos, something rattled, a hidden compartment she hadn't noticed before. She pried at the corner until the false bottom lifted with a creak. Inside lay a small, leather-bound book wrapped in oilcloth. The cover read, Isaac Thomson, Hollow Creek Log, 1938-39. Her pulse kicked hard. She sat by the fire, unwrapped it carefully, and began to read. March 5th, 1938. The men found the lower vein today. The rock sings when struck like it's hollow. Gold veins run through it, but the sound, it's not natural. March 18th, 1938, 3 men gone missing. The air grows heavy the deeper we go. They say the mountain hums at night. I told them it's just wind. I lied. April Suit, 1938. Whatever breathes below is older than gold. Amara flipped the pages faster. The entries grew darker, more frantic. Isaac wrote of men collapsing, of lights flickering underground, of whispers in the rock itself. And then, near the end, May 14th, 1939, I sealed the chamber today. Lost 5 good men doing it. Whatever we found down there, it wasn't meant for daylight. The ore hums when the moon is full. I've hidden the key and the map. If anyone opens that seal, they'll wake it again. The ink ended in a jagged line, as if he'd stopped mid-word. Amara stared at the page until the fire popped, breaking her trance. The storm outside had deepened. Rain battered the roof. Wind howled through the chimney. Scout barked suddenly, a deep warning growl. His hackles rose. Amara snatched her revolver and moved to the door. "What is it?" Lightning flashed, and there, just beyond the porch rail, stood a man in a slick black raincoat, face half hidden by shadow. He didn't move. He just watched. "Get off my property!" she shouted, raising the gun. He didn't answer. The next flash of lightning revealed something clutched in his hand, the brass key. Then he was gone. The forest swallowed him whole. Morning came grey and thin. The storm had washed the mountain clean, leaving the world silent. Amara loaded her truck with supplies, lanterns, rope, rations, and the journal. She couldn't wait for Kane, whoever that man was. He had the key and was heading for Hollow's End. Scout jumped into the passenger seat as the engine roared to life. The old mining road was little more than a scar through the woods, overgrown and slick with mud. Branches scraped the windshield. The radio crackled with static, then a faint voice. Units report movement near Hollow Creek. Approach with caution. Kane's voice. She grabbed the mic. "Lucas, it's Amara. I'm headed your way." Static. "Then stay put, Amara. We've got armed men at the site." The transmission cut out. "Too late," she muttered, pressing harder on the gas. By noon, she reached the end of the road, a clearing littered with old mining gear. Fresh tire tracks carved through the mud. Beyond them, the mouth of a tunnel yawned black and wet, a thin plume of smoke curling from inside. Scout barked once, hackles high. "Stay close," Amara whispered. She grabbed her lantern and stepped inside. The air was heavy, vibrating faintly, the same hum Isaac had described. The deeper she went, the stronger it grew, until it wasn't just sound but feeling, a low pulse crawling under her skin. Halfway down the tunnel, she heard voices, men. She crept closer, crouching behind a stack of rusted barrels. 3 figures stood around a generator and a tripod light. One held the key. The leader, a tall man with a grey beard, was barking orders. "Get that drill in place. The seal's under those markings. We break through by nightfall." Another man hesitated. "Sir, the rock's humming again." "Then we're close," the leader snapped. "You want to walk away from millions?" Amara's stomach turned. She glanced at the wall. The spiral symbol had been half chiseled away, revealing a seam in the stone, a perfect circular outline. A door. The grey-bearded man inserted the key into a metal plate embedded in the rock. The hum deepened to a throbbing vibration that shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. Amara stepped out, gun raised. "Stop right there!" They froze. The leader turned slowly, surprise flickering into a grin. "Well," he said, voice calm, "if it isn't Miss Thomson, you've got your great-grandfather's eyes. Who the hell are you?" "Dr. Everett Kindle," he said smoothly. "Geologist, entrepreneur, and it seems the man finishing what your ancestor started. He sealed this for a reason." "Oh, I know," Kindle said. "He thought he could contain it. But you can't cage a vein that runs this deep. It's not just gold, it's energy, living energy. Do you know what it's worth?" The rock behind him groaned, cracks forming along the circular seal. A low, almost mournful sound echoed through the mine. Kindle turned the key. The sound became a roar. Scout barked wildly, backing up. Amara fired a warning shot. "Don't." Too late. The seal exploded outward in a cloud of dust and light. A hot gust of wind slammed through the tunnel, throwing everyone to the ground. The generator sparked and died. In the sudden silence, a faint golden glow pulsed from the open chamber. Something shimmered inside, not gold, not stone. Movement. Kindle rose slowly, eyes wide, awe replacing greed. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. "It's alive." Amara grabbed Scout and backed toward the exit. "We're leaving, now." But then she heard it, a low, rhythmic sound like a heartbeat echoing through the mountain. The hum was no longer in the walls. It was in the air. In her, the lantern flickered. The light inside the chamber pulsed once, bright enough to sear her eyes. And then came a voice, not from any throat but from the stone itself, whispering her name. "Amara!" She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over Scout. "No, no, that's impossible." Kindle stared, transfixed. "It knows you." The ground shuddered again, and the ceiling began to crack. Rocks fell, crushing one of the men. The others screamed. Amara turned and ran, Scout at her heels, the roar of collapsing stone chasing them toward daylight. They burst from the tunnel just as the mountain let out a deafening groan. The entrance caved in behind them, sending up a storm of dust and debris. She fell to her knees in the mud, gasping. The rain had started again, cold and relentless. When the dust cleared, there was no sign of Kindle or his men. Just the blocked tunnel and the faint, lingering hum beneath the earth, steady as a heartbeat. Amara whispered, "What did you do, Isaac?" Scout whined softly, pressing against her. Lightning flashed over the ridge, illuminating her reflection in a puddle, eyes glowing faintly gold for just an instant. The rain did not stop for 2 days. It fell in steady, cold sheets, turning the valley into a silver blur of mist and mud. Amara barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the same whisper, the voice from the stone, soft and low, calling her name like a memory surfacing from the dark. Amara. By dawn of the 3rd day, she was already packing again. Scout watched her from the doorway, tail drooping, ears flicking at every sound. "I know," she murmured. "We should leave." "But I can't, not yet." The hum under the ground hadn't stopped. She could feel it in her bones now, a faint rhythm pulsing through the soles of her feet. It wasn't imagination. The mountain itself was alive. She drove down to Hollow Creek, where Sheriff Kane's truck was parked behind the ranger station. His face lit up when she stepped out, but only for a moment. "You're lucky to be standing," he said. That blast registered on seismic monitors all the way in Boulder. What the hell were you doing up there? Kindle opened it, Amara said. He found the seal. I tried to stop him. Kindle? Kane swore softly. That's the same guy under federal investigation for illegal excavation in Utah. We thought he'd gone dark. Well, he's gone now, Amara said quietly. The whole tunnel collapsed. I don't think anyone survived. Kane studied her. You sure about that? No, he sighed. The site's sealed for now. I've got men checking the perimeter, but whatever was under there, it's better left buried. Amara nodded, but her hand drifted unconsciously toward her chest. Beneath her jacket, the faint golden glow pulsed again, weak but unmistakable. Kane's radio crackled. Sheriff, you better come see this. Over. He frowned, motioned for her to follow. They drove up the muddy ridge road until they reached the overlook above the mine. Several deputies stood in the clearing, staring at the ground. What is it? Kane asked. One of them pointed. That wasn't there yesterday. Amara stepped closer. A new fissure had opened near the collapsed entrance, about 3 feet wide and deep enough to reveal something strange. A faint, steady glow seeping from the rock. Like molten gold beneath the surface, it pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Kane whistled low. Jesus! Before he could stop her, Amara knelt and touched the edge of the fissure. The glow flared, racing outward like veins of fire under the soil. Every man stepped back instinctively. Amara, get away from there. But she couldn't move. Images slammed into her head, too fast, too vivid to resist. A mine lit by lanterns. Men shouting. Isaac Thomson, her great-grandfather, swinging a pickaxe as a golden mist rose from the stone. Then darkness, a shape in the light, a voice whispering, "Remember." She gasped and stumbled backward, clutching her temples. The light dimmed. Kane caught her before she fell. "You all right?" "Yeah," she breathed. "I saw him, my great-grandfather, the mine. It showed me." Kane gave her a long, uneasy look. "Maybe you hit your head in that blast." But she knew it wasn't a dream. The mountain had shared something with her. A memory. That night she sat alone by the fire, the journal open on her lap. Each time she touched its worn pages, the pulse inside her chest synced with it, like the book itself was a conduit. Scout slept beside her, his breathing slow and even. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, the sky clearing to reveal a cold, endless stretch of stars. She flipped to the last blank page of Isaac's journal. For a moment, she thought she saw faint letters forming under her fingertips, words written in glowing ink. "You carry what I sealed. Guard it, or the mountain will wake again." Her breath caught. "Isaac?" No answer, only the distant rumble of thunder rolling through the peaks. At sunrise, she drove into town for supplies, but the locals were already whispering. Strange lights had been seen over Hollow's End during the night. Animals had fled the woods. The river had turned a pale, metallic gold for 1/2 mile downstream. An old miner at the diner shook his head when he saw her. "Your bloodline's cursed, girl. That mountain's been hungry since your granddaddy's time." She ignored him, but his words clung like burrs. As she left, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street, windows tinted, engine running. A man inside lowered his phone as she passed, eyes following her. When she turned the next corner and looked back, it was gone. Back at the cabin, she found the door slightly ajar. Scout growled before she even stepped in. She drew her revolver. "Who's there?" Silence. Then from the shadows by the hearth, a faint voice. "You shouldn't have opened it." She froze. The figure stepped forward, mud-smeared, pale, eyes sunken. "Dr. Kindle, impossible," she whispered. You were buried, he gave a hollow smile. The mountain doesn't bury, it consumes. It feeds. His hands trembled. Veins of gold shimmered under his skin, pulsing faintly. Amara backed up, gun raised. Stay back. You don't understand, he said, voice breaking. It's not just gold. It's alive. It wants out. And now it's in us. She saw it then. His pupils glowing faintly, the same golden light that had flashed in her own reflection. Scout barked furiously. Kindle staggered forward, clutching his chest. It's waking, Amara. The mountain remembers everything it's ever swallowed. And it's remembering you. He collapsed to his knees, screaming as light flared through his veins, consuming him from the inside. When it faded, all that remained was a thin, glittering dust that sank into the floorboards like ash. Amara stood frozen, the revolver trembling in her hand. Scout whimpered, pressing close to her leg. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying a sound that wasn't quite thunder. It was deeper, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. Amara looked toward the ridge. The fissure glowed faintly in the distance. Spreading further each minute, she whispered, "It's not done." The mountain pulsed once more, slow, steady, alive, and deep beneath Hollow's End. Something ancient began to stir. By the time dawn painted the peaks in pale light, Amara could already feel it, the hum inside her chest growing louder, sinking to her heartbeat. It wasn't pain, not yet, but it was there. Every throb seemed to echo through the cabin walls, through the ground, through the mountains themselves. Scout wouldn't leave her side. He paced restlessly, ears twitching, nose lifting toward the ridge, where the fissure still glowed like a living scar. Amara sat at the table, the old journal open before her. She traced her fingers across the blank pages that had begun to shimmer faintly overnight. New words appeared as she touched them. Isaac's handwriting again, neat and desperate. The gold is not metal. It is memory compressed and alive. The mountain feeds on time itself. Each strike of the pickaxe awakened it. Each death made it stronger. She swallowed hard. If it marks you, it will remember through you. There is no curing it, only containing it. Her hand trembled as she looked down. Beneath her skin, faint golden veins shimmered when the morning light touched her wrist. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no," Scout whimpered softly, pressing his head against her knee. The air inside the tunnel was alive, not moving, not still, alive. It vibrated around Amara like a pulse, a rhythm older than language. The walls shimmered faintly in the lantern light, veins of gold tracing along the rock like glowing rivers under the skin of the world. Kane followed close behind, his flashlight cutting thin slices through the dark. "If we get out of here alive," he muttered, "remind me to quit my job." Amara gave a small, humorless smile. "If we get out of here alive, you won't need to quit. There won't be anything left to guard." Scout moved ahead of them, nose low to the ground, tail rigid. He was silent except for the occasional huff when the tunnel narrowed. The hum grew louder with every step, no longer just sound, but a pressure pressing against their skulls. After half an hour, they reached an intersection where the old mining timbers had collapsed long ago. Beyond it, the rock was smooth, not carved by men, but by something else, something that had shaped itself. Kane shone his light across the walls. "This isn't mining work. This looks grown," Amara nodded. "Isaac wrote about it. He said the deeper they dug, the less human the stone became." The tunnel descended steeply, opening into a vast cavern that glowed like the inside of a golden lung. Stalactites hung above like molten teeth. At the center stood a great stone altar, carved in spirals that pulsed faintly with light. On its surface rested a metallic object, round, smooth, and beating slowly like a heart. The core. Cain whispered, "Tell me that's not alive." Amara stepped closer, the glow reflecting in her eyes. "It's not alive," she said softly. "It is life." Her veins shimmered brighter as she neared the altar. The hum merged with her pulse until she couldn't tell which was which. She reached out, fingertips brushing the surface of the core. Instantly the world vanished. She stood in a memory not her own, the mountain's memory. The mine wasn't a mine anymore. It was a cathedral of gold, filled with men shouting, machines grinding, and a strange wind that blew upward from the earth's marrow. At the center, her great-grandfather Isaac knelt, his hands covered in blood and dust, tears streaking his face. "Forgive me," he whispered to the light. "We didn't know what we woke," a voice answered. "Not human, not divine. You took what was mine. You bled my memory for your hunger. I'll seal it again," Isaac said desperately. "I'll make them forget." The light pulsed once. "Then you will pay the debt in blood," he nodded, trembling. "So be it." And with that he pressed his hand to the core. His body erupted in golden light, screams echoing through the cavern as the energy consumed him, pouring into the seal he'd built, binding the mountain shut once more. The light dimmed. His body became part of the stone. The vision shattered. Amara stumbled backward, gasping. Cain caught her before she fell. "What happened?" She clutched her chest, breath ragged. "He sacrificed himself to bind it. That's why the seal held this long." Cain glanced at the core. "Then we leave it sealed. We get out of here." But the mountain wasn't done listening. A low tremor rolled through the cavern, dust raining from above. The golden veins along the walls flared like lightning. The core pulsed faster, like a heart waking from sleep. Amara backed up slowly. "No, it's remembering." "Remembering what?" She met his eyes. "That we broke the seal." The tremor became a quake. Chunks of rock fell from the ceiling. The hum deepened into a sound like breathing, long, slow, and furious. Scout barked, circling Amara anxiously. The altar split down the middle, molten gold spilling out like blood. Shapes began to form in it. Figures, human at first, then something else. Faces half-made, bodies shifting between flesh and metal. Cain fired his gun. The bullets dissolved in mid-air. "Run!" Amara shouted. They sprinted toward the tunnel, the ground heaving beneath them. The golden figures followed, moving without sound, their eyes glowing like coals. The exit loomed ahead, too far, too slow. Amara skidded to a halt, turned back, and raised Isaac's journal. Its pages blazed with golden light. "Containment," she whispered. Containment, like he did. The mountain shuddered as the journal's glow merged with the light from her veins. Words erupted from her mouth, not in English, but in the old language written in the walls. An incantation of memory and time. The gold recoiled, screaming like wind through broken glass. Cain shielded his face. "What the hell are you doing?" "Finishing it," she cried. The light swirled around her, pulling the shapes back into the altar, sealing the cracks inch by inch. The core pulsed once, twice, and then went still. Silence. Only Amara's ragged breathing and the drip of water breaking the stillness. Cain lowered his arm slowly. "You did it?" She looked down. Her veins still glowed faintly, but the light in the walls was gone. The hum was silent, for now, she said softly. It's dormant again. He looked at her hand, clutching the journal. But it used you to do it. I know. A faint smile touched her lips. Guess the mountains got a new keeper. They emerged from the mine just before dawn. The fissure had stopped spreading. The glow beneath the soil was fading, replaced by the pale grey of mist and morning. Scout padded beside her, muzzle dusted with gold. Kane walked in silence, his expression unreadable. At the ridge, Amara turned for one last look. The mountain stood still and quiet, its slopes washed clean by rain. But in the hush, she swore she could still hear it, faint, patient, alive, waiting. She placed the journal on the ground and whispered, "Rest." The pages shimmered once, then turned dark. The light gone, Kane touched her shoulder. "You're coming back with me. You need help, tests, something." Amara looked down at her glowing hands and then at the mountain. "No, my place is here." He started to protest, but she was already walking away, Scout beside her, their silhouettes swallowed by the fog. That night, as she sat outside her cabin, she felt it again, the faintest hum beneath her skin. Not pain this time, not fear, just connection. The mountain wasn't just remembering, it was breathing through her, and for the first time, she whispered back, "I remember too." The stars pulsed faintly above Hollow's End, gold threaded among the silver. The mountain slept, but not forever. By mid-morning she drove down to the ranger station again, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to ache. Sheriff Kane was already there, surrounded by men in hazmat suits and unmarked vehicles. The black SUV from town idled nearby. "Amara," Kane said, spotting her. "You shouldn't be here," she ignored him. "The fissure, it's spreading, isn't it?" He hesitated. "Yeah, the ground's heating up from the inside. The geologists say it's some kind of geothermal anomaly. I say that's bull." He motioned toward the clearing. A wide line of golden cracks now stretched up the hillside, the glow brighter than before. Plants near it had wilted. Their roots turned brittle and crystalline. One of the suited men approached, holding a scanning device that clicked rapidly. "Radiation's off the charts, Sheriff. But it's not any isotope we recognize." Amara felt a sharp ringing in her ears. "It's not radiation. It's alive." The man frowned at her through his visor. "Alive?" Before she could answer, Scout barked sharply, drawing everyone's attention. A doe had wandered into the clearing, its fur glinting faintly gold under the light. It froze, stared blankly toward them, and then collapsed, skin cracking like dry clay. The glow inside it faded to nothing. Kane swore under his breath. "Jesus." Amara turned away, bile rising. "It's spreading faster than you think. That's what Isaac was afraid of." He looked at her sharply. "You mean your great-grandfather's journal? You still have it?" She nodded. "It's not just history, Lucas. It's a warning." Before he could answer, the black SUV door opened. A tall woman in a dark suit stepped out, her badge flashing silver. "Dr. Amara Thomson," she said, voice clipped, precise. "I'm Agent Rena Cole, Department of Energy and Environmental Security." "We need to speak now," Kane bristled. "You got a warrant?" Cole barely looked at him. "We don't need one. The site's been classified a federal hazard zone. All civilians must clear out immediately." Amara crossed her arms. "And what happens when the hazard swallows the whole valley?" Cole's gaze hardened. "That's what we're trying to prevent." "But you've been exposed. Your name came up in the seismic logs and eyewitness reports. We need to run some tests. I'm not your lab rat." Cole's expression didn't change. "You already are, whether you like it or not." They took her blood that afternoon in a temporary field lab near Hollow Creek. The results came back within hours, quicker than any hospital test she'd ever seen. Cole laid the report on the table between them. Your hemoglobin is binding with a substance we've never encountered. Structurally, it's similar to gold, but reactive. Living, even. It's integrating with your cells. Amara stared. You mean I'm turning into... Cole shook her head. No, but it's rewriting you, adapting. Your cells are stronger, your neural activity's doubled, and your blood emits low-level electromagnetic pulses. Whatever was in that mine, it's using you as a conduit. Amara felt cold. If it's alive, what does it want? Cole met her eyes. Connection, expansion, everything living does. She paused. Listen, Dr. Thomson. If this energy can be harnessed safely, it could power the entire country. Your family's discovery might change the world. Amara slammed her hand on the table. It killed people, Agent Cole. My great-grandfather died trying to bury it. Cole's calm cracked for the first time. And if he hadn't, maybe the world wouldn't still be bleeding oil into its own veins. They stared at each other for a long, tense moment. Finally, Amara said quietly, You can't control it. Cole's voice dropped. We already are. That night, Amara slipped out of the camp under cover of fog, Scout padding silently beside her. She knew what she had to do. The journal had mentioned something about a containment chamber, a secondary seal deeper inside the mine system, beyond the main shaft that had collapsed. If she could find it, maybe she could stop the spread. The fisher's glow lit a path up the mountain like veins of molten light. The air buzzed faintly, carrying whispers that rose and fell like breath. Halfway up, she heard a voice behind her. Amara, stop! Kane. He emerged from the mist, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Oh, you're walking into hell, she turned. It's already here, he sighed, stepping closer. You can't fight something you don't understand. Maybe not, she said softly, but I can finish what my family started. Kane hesitated, then nodded. Then you're not doing it alone. They reached the ridge near midnight. The fissure had widened into a canyon, its walls shimmering with liquid gold. Heat poured from below. The hum had grown into a steady, thunderous rhythm that shook their bones. At its edge stood a crude metal door, half buried in rubble. The remnants of an older entrance Isaac must have built decades ago. On its surface, faint carvings glowed through the rust. The same spiral symbol. Amara touched it. The mountain pulsed. The glow surged up her arm, through her chest until her vision filled with light. She saw flashes again. Isaac sealing the door, whispering a prayer. The mountain answering back. The gold inside writhing like fire made of memory. Then a final word echoing in her mind. Return. When her vision cleared, she was standing at the threshold. The seal had opened. Warm air breathed out from the dark below. Kane whispered, God help us. Amara stepped forward, lantern raised. No, she said quietly. God's not in here, Scout growled, the sound low and warning. Behind them, the fissure flared brighter, spreading toward the valley like roots seeking the surface. There was no more time. Amara took a deep breath and stepped into the mountain's heart. The mountain had gone quiet, but the quiet wasn't peace. Every sound felt too clear now. The drip of dew from pine needles, the faint scurry of a field mouse beneath the porch. The air itself seemed to listen. Amara woke before dawn each morning, her skin faintly glowing where the veins of gold had once burned. No matter how much she scrubbed, the shimmer never left. Kane had gone back to town after insisting she call if anything unnatural happened. She hadn't called. What would she say? That sometimes the earth spoke her name? That she could hear the low hum of bedrock under her boots, as if the world were breathing? She sat on her porch that morning with a mug of coffee and watched the mist move through the hollows. Scout lay at her feet, chin resting on his paws. He'd been restless lately, more alert, more watchful. Whenever she drifted too far into thought, he'd nudge her leg, grounding her back in the present. "Yeah," she murmured, stroking his fur. "I feel it too." When the sun finally cleared the ridge, Amara stood. Her shadow fell long across the yard, but the light bent oddly around her like heat haze. She clenched her jaw and turned toward the storage chest she'd kept under a tarp by the shed, the one that had started it all. She lifted the lid. Inside, the brass fittings had darkened to a dull green. The carved spiral symbol was still there, but it looked different now, deeper, more intricate, as if it had grown on its own. And when she touched it, warmth pulsed through her palm. Her breath caught. "You're still here." That night she dreamed again, not in images but in feeling. She stood beneath the mountain, her heartbeat sinking with its low, patient rhythm. Something vast moved in the dark, not menacing, not kind, just eternal. It whispered in a voice like flowing water, "The debt is paid, but the promise remains." She woke sweating, Scout whining beside her. The room shimmered faintly, as if dust motes had turned to gold. By the third day, the symptoms had changed. When she touched wood, sap rose through the grain. When she walked barefoot, wildflowers bloomed in her wake, small, white, trembling in the chill air. And when she stood by the creek, the current changed tempo, slowing as if listening to her. Amara stared at her reflection in the water. Her irises had turned a darker amber, glowing faintly when she moved into the shade. She whispered, "What are you doing to me?" The mountain didn't answer, but deep beneath the surface she heard that same hum, the heartbeat she'd felt in the cavern. It wasn't fading. It was growing stronger. Kane showed up at noon 2 days later, his truck rumbling up the drive. He looked exhausted, mud on his boots, eyes bloodshot. "You didn't call," he said, stepping out. "You were supposed to call." Amara folded her arms. "I'm fine." "You're glowing, Amara. That's not fine." She gave a small, tired laugh. "Yeah, I noticed." He hesitated before stepping closer. "Look, the fissures are spreading again." 2 new sinkholes opened along Hollow Creek. Geologists say the readings are off the charts. "I think it's connected to you." "I know it is." Her voice was calm, steady. "It's trying to finish what it started. The energy has to settle somewhere. If it can't go back into the ground..." Kane stared. "Then what?" "It'll stay in me." That evening, they sat by the fire in uneasy silence. Scout lay nearby, watching the flames with half-lidded eyes. Outside, the wind moaned through the trees like a tired ghost. Kane rubbed his hands together. "You realize what that means, right? You're carrying whatever that thing was. You're the seal now." Amara nodded slowly. "The mountain needed a keeper. My great-grandfather volunteered last time. It chose me this time." He leaned forward. "So what happens when you die?" She looked into the fire, its light reflected gold in her pupils. "Then it chooses again, or it wakes." Neither spoke for a while. The flames popped and hissed. Outside, thunder rolled far away, though no rain came. Kane finally said, "There's a lab in Asheville. People who deal with geological anomalies. Maybe they can..." "No." Her tone was sharp, final. "They try to extract it, study it. That's how this all started. It's not meant to be mined, Kane. It's meant to be kept." He stared at her a long time, then nodded. "Then what's your plan?" "I keep it quiet. I make sure no one digs again. And when the time comes..." She looked down at Scout. "I'll make sure the mountain chooses right." Later that night, long after Kane had fallen asleep on the couch, Amara stood outside under a sky heavy with stars. The ridge loomed in the distance, dark and solemn. The hum under her skin was steady now, less violent, more like a heartbeat she'd learned to live with. She took the gold coin, the one she'd kept from the chamber, and held it up to the moonlight. It gleamed, catching every faint shimmer of the veins beneath her wrist. "You said the real wealth was deeper than gold," she whispered to the night. "I think I understand now." A breeze rustled the pines. Scout padded up beside her, pressing his head against her knee. "Looks like we're keepers now, huh, boy?" He wagged his tail softly. She smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the ridge. "Then we'd better do it right." The next morning she drove down to the county office and quietly filed paperwork for a new conservation area, Hollow Creek Reserve. No mining, no development, no drilling, just protected land. When the clerk asked why she wanted to do it, Amara simply said, "Because some places belong to the earth." On her way home, she stopped by the overlook that faced the valley. From up there, she could see everything: the cabin, the ridge, the faint line of mist curling where the mine used to be. The hum inside her chest pulsed once. "Warm and alive," she whispered. "You're home." And for the first time since the cave, she felt something close to peace. But far beneath Hollow's End, something stirred in the sealed chamber. A faint echo rippled through the stone, like a sigh, or perhaps a promise. The mountain hadn't forgotten its keeper. It never did. 10 years passed. The world had changed in all the ways that didn't matter, and stayed the same in the ones that did. Hollow's End was quieter now. No more miners, no more surveyors, no more rumors of buried treasure. Just mist, pine, and the endless rhythm of wind whispering through the ridges. Amara Thomson had become part of that rhythm. She'd built a modest life as the caretaker of the Hollow Creek Reserve, overseeing the trails, monitoring wildlife, and ensuring no one ventured too deep into the restricted zones. Locals called her the Mountain Woman, half in respect, half in awe. Some said she'd struck it rich years ago and hid her fortune in the hills. Others whispered she'd gone a little mad after the quake, that she still talked to the rocks when no one was around. She let them talk. It was easier that way. The truth was simpler and stranger. Every morning when the mist rolled low and the world was still, Amara could feel it. The heartbeat of the mountain beneath her feet. Not loud, not constant, but steady, alive. And in the deep quiet of her cabin, the gold still shimmered faintly under her skin, never fading, never dimming. Scout was older now, muzzle gone grey, eyes still bright as river stones. He moved slower, but he never left her side. That autumn morning he followed her down to the creek where the fog was thick enough to hide the world. Amara knelt, running her hand through the cold water. The ripples seemed to move against the current for a heartbeat, then stilled. "You're restless again," she murmured to the air. "Something's coming." The hum under her skin thrummed once, an acknowledgement or a warning. Later that day, a jeep pulled into the drive. Gain stepped out, older too, hair gone silver at the temples. He still carried that tired determination, though time had softened it into quiet respect. "Still here," he said, smiling faintly as he looked at her cabin. "Didn't think you'd actually stay this long." Amara leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. "Someone has to. The mountain doesn't like being alone." Kane gave a half laugh. "You say that like it's a person." She met his gaze. It is. He studied her for a long moment. There've been tremors again. Small ones. Nothing major, but they trace right under this ridge. She nodded slowly. It's shifting. The seal's weakening. He frowned. So what do we do? Amara looked toward the peaks, veiled in grey cloud. Not we. Me. That night she lit a fire and sat on the floor with the old chest before her, the same one that had started everything a decade ago. The carvings on it were glowing now, faint but unmistakable. The spiral had deepened into a labyrinth, curling inward toward a single point of light. Scout lay beside her, resting his head on her lap. His breathing was shallow, slower than it used to be. She ran her fingers through his fur. "You've done enough, old boy," she whispered. "You don't have to follow me this time." He lifted his head and licked her hand. Then he laid it back down, as if to say, "You know I will anyway." Amara smiled softly. "Yeah, I figured." She packed lightly, lantern, rope, a small pack of food, and the gold coin she'd kept all these years. When she stepped outside, the night was alive with wind. The stars seemed to pulse faintly, in rhythm with something vast below. The mountain was calling. The path to the old mine had changed, collapsed, overgrown, swallowed by moss and time. But Amara moved with purpose, her steps guided more by instinct than memory. Scout trotted beside her, tail low but steady. When they reached the cave entrance, she paused. The air smelled of rain and metal. A faint golden light shimmered deep within. "Still awake after all this time," she whispered. "I guess I should have known." She descended slowly, the light growing brighter with every step. The chamber was just as she remembered, vast, silent, sacred. The fissure had widened again, glowing faintly from within like molten veins. The hum rose around her, filling her bones. She walked to the edge and held out the coin. It trembled in her hand, then floated gently toward the rift. "I understand now," she said softly. "You never wanted gold taken. You wanted it guarded." The light flared, enveloping her. Scout barked once, sharp, clear, and the sound echoed like thunder. When Kane returned the next morning, the cabin was empty. The bed was neatly made, the fire out. Scout lay on the porch, still and peaceful, eyes closed as if asleep. Kane called her name once. The mountains didn't answer, but as he turned to leave, he felt a vibration beneath his feet, a faint pulse, slow and steady. He looked toward the ridge. A faint shimmer of gold rippled across the peaks. Just for a moment, before fading into mist, he whispered, "Goodbye, Amara." Years later, hikers who wandered into Hollow Creek Reserve would tell strange stories. They said when you walked the trails at dusk, sometimes the trees whispered your name. That in the creek's reflection you could see veins of gold glowing beneath the stones. And if you were quiet enough, you could hear a woman's laughter echo faintly through the pines, low, wild, and free. Some swore they'd seen her silhouette near the ridge, a figure standing tall, with a dog by her side. Both bathed in golden light, watching over the valley. Locals built a small sign near the overlook. It read, "In memory of Amara Thomson, keeper of Hollow's End. She found gold, but left something greater behind, and on nights when the moon was high, the wind would rise and sweep through the trees, humming a tune that seemed almost human. The mountain was alive. It reminded me of her. It always would." Years had passed, but Hollow's End remained untouched, preserved by the woman who had once stumbled into its secrets. The cabin, now framed by tall pines and misty ridges, looked smaller against the vast mountains, yet it felt alive with the heartbeat of the land. Scout's muzzle had long since gone silver, his body slower, but still he remained by Amara's side, or rather beside the echo of her. The villagers swore they sometimes saw a golden figure on the ridge, standing tall, with a dog at her side, glowing faintly in the twilight. Some said she was a spirit now, bound to the mountain, the true keeper of its secrets. Others whispered that the gold she had left behind was never meant to be taken, that the mountain had chosen her to guard it forever. At the old pine above the sealed shaft, a single gold coin rested, sun catching it at dawn, so it gleamed like fire. It was her gift to the earth, a reminder that wealth meant nothing without stewardship, and that some treasures are meant to remain untouchable. And when the wind whispered through the trees, it carried a melody that no human could fully understand, a song of life, memory, and endurance. It hummed beneath the ridges, through the creek, across the valleys, reminding anyone who listened that some things belong to the earth alone. In the quiet, you could almost hear her voice, soft and steady. Carried by the pine-scented air, some things belong to the earth. We are only visitors, and somewhere deep beneath the roots, the mountain pulsed once, steady and eternal. It had kept its promise. The echo of Amara and Scout's footsteps faded into the mist, leaving the mountain to its watch. Years had passed since Amara's first step into the Hollow Creek mine, and the mountain had claimed her in ways few could understand. Her cabin still sat perched on the ridge, quiet and modest, but it hummed with a presence that could not be ignored. The pines whispered in the wind, creaking and bending, as if in conversation with something unseen. Even the creek seemed to carry a low, steady pulse beneath its surface, a heartbeat in tune with the land. Scout, now fully grey at the muzzle, lay curled on the porch steps. His eyes, sharp and intelligent even in old age, followed every bird and shadow, every movement in the forest. He'd become not just her companion, but her witness, the living link between the wild and the human who had been chosen to protect it. Amara herself had changed. Her hair had hints of silver, and faint lines marked her face from years of sun, wind, and worry. But her eyes, golden and warm, still carried the spark of discovery, courage, and quiet reverence for the secret she bore. Sometimes, when the wind rose just right, villagers claimed they saw her silhouette on the ridge, her figure bathed in a soft, golden glow. With Scout always by her side, it was said she no longer walked the trails alone. In the dead of night, if the forest was quiet, hikers and campers reported a low hum rising from the earth itself, a rhythm that matched the pulse beneath their own feet. Some swore it was a warning. Others claimed it was a song of protection. Few dared to get close enough to know the truth. One crisp autumn morning, Amara climbed to the old pine above the sealed shaft, the very tree where she had first lowered herself into the earth. She held the last gold coin from the hidden mine, worn and soft with age. With Scout at her side, she placed it gently into the soil. The sun broke through a thin layer of fog, striking the coin so that it seemed to flare with life, gleaming as if the mountain itself recognized her offering. "You've kept your promise," she whispered. "I hope I've been worthy." The wind responded with a soft rustle, shaking pine needles like applause. The mountain's hum deepened, vibrating beneath her boots in a rhythm that made her chest warm with understanding. She realized that her role had never been about gold or fame. It had been about listening, respecting, and guarding the natural world that had entrusted her with its secret. Scout nudged her hand with his nose, his loyalty undiminished by time. She laughed softly, her voice carried away by the wind. "You've done your part, boy. The mountain, it's ours now, She lingered for a moment, watching the mist curl through the valley below, carrying the sunlight with it. Somewhere deep in the forest, the creek sang its age-old tune, winding through hidden hollows as if recounting the story of the lost miners, the gold, and the woman who had chosen legacy over fortune. When she returned to the cabin, she found letters waiting, notes from hikers, scholars, and even distant relatives of the Henderson family. They all shared a common theme: wonder at what she had protected, gratitude for preserving something irreplaceable. None asked for directions, none demanded maps or gold. It seemed that the mountain's secret, like its hum, had found its proper place. Years flowed onward, and life continued in its quiet rhythms. Amara and Scout walked the ridge at dawn, often alone, often in silence, always alert to the pulse beneath their feet. And while the world beyond the mountains changed, roads widened, towns grew, technology surged, the forest remained steadfast, guarding the echoes of history, gold, and the choices made by one courageous woman. And on nights when the mist lay heavy in the valley and the stars glimmered like diamonds through the pines, those who listened carefully could hear a melody that was not wind, not water, but something alive, a heartbeat, steady and eternal. It was the mountain speaking. It remembered her. It remembered Scout. It remembered the promise kept. Amara smiled faintly to herself, feeling the hum in her bones. "Some things belong to the earth," she murmured. "We were just meant to find them long enough to understand." And as she turned toward home, Scout following her with slow, sure steps, a beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, striking the pine above the shaft. The coin gleamed one last time, sending golden rays dancing across the forest floor before fading gently back into the soil. The mountain exhaled, a quiet, ancient sigh, and the valley settled, peaceful once more. Its secrets remained, guarded by those who had been chosen, whispered to only those who listened. The echo of Amara and Scout lingered in the wind, in the hum beneath the rocks, and in the gentle, enduring pulse of Hollow Creek. Somewhere, in the heart of the mountain, the gold, the ghosts, and the memory of a brave woman and her loyal dog rested, eternal, untouched, sacred. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.